Robert Halfon.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, as a new MP, you see a lot of cases of human suffering. Particularly as a new MP, you get many people writing to you and contacting you every day with all kinds of difficult stories. But of all the cases I have come across since being elected as Member of Parliament for Harlow last year, this is the case where I see most injustice. I'm hugely grateful to the Speaker for allowing this debate, as this is an issue that I've cared about and campaigned on for many months. Today, I want to recount a story of two utterly decent, salt-of-the-earth individuals who do the right thing, who obey the law, who have worked hard, who have saved hard all their lives, and who have suffered unnecessarily, pointlessly, because of the actions of state agencies. Don and Anita Horton have not just suffered, but they have experienced an enormous injustice. This injustice has caused misery for themselves and their immediate family and neighbours. Worst of all, their suffering has completely been in vain. The story of Don and Anita Horton is as follows. Anita Horton was employed by the Benefits Agency from February 1994 until retirement in May 1999, aged 61 years old. She returned to work for Job Centre Plus in April 2001 until April 2003, aged 65 years old. She was a dedicated public servant with an honourable record of helping people return to work. During her employment, she became aware that an individual was claiming disability benefits. There was strong evidence to suggest that the individual's claim was fraudulent, so they reported it to the fraud team. They were told that due to staff problems, an investigation would not be possible. The individual was witnessed on several occasions carrying heavy objects, such as bed bases and bags of cement. He was often seen climbing nimbly up ladders to trim tall trees and reportedly worked as a cash-in-hand labourer and gardener. The Hortons felt that this threw some doubt on his disability benefit claims, so as citizens felt obligated to report this to the Job Centre Plus fraud team. On the 14th of March 2006, Don and Anita Horton and many neighbours gave witness statements to Paul Carlisle, who then spent several days making video recordings and interviewing the individual concerned. However, as a consequence, personal details on the statements by Don and Anita were passed to the suspect individual without their permission. These statements were made in good faith, and Don and Anita thought that they would be protected by the Data Protection Act 1998. During the time that the said individual was in receipt of benefits, and it is believed that he continues to receive some benefits, there are anecdotal reports that he purchased a 4-bedroom house, 2 new cars, significant refurbishment works to his house, such as new central heating, and that he boasted his bank balance was £148,000. Evidence of this is held by Essex Police. After this, the individual began to walk occasionally with a stick. However, he has been regularly seen in the town centre carrying several heavy shopping bags without a stick, climbing across ditches in the local park, and of course continuing to work in a manual job. For the last 4 years, that is 48 months, Don and Anita and their neighbours have been continually harassed, intimidated, and in some cases physically assaulted by the said individual. Their cars have been damaged, they have been constantly verbally abused, and many attempts have been made to break their windows or damage their property. Don and Anita were provided with personal alarms by the police following regular threats of violence and even death threats by the individual. It took 3 years of this ordeal before a court date was set, on 29th of June 2009. The individual was due to appear at Harlow Magistrates Court, but the Witness Care Office informed Don and Anita that the individual was too ill to attend. A new hearing was set for the 19th of October 2009, but this in turn was subsequently postponed. On the same day as the individual was too ill to attend the Magistrates Court, 29th of June 2009, it transpired that he was actually in Harlow County Court with his wife, issuing a summons against Mr. Horton for the sum of £5,000, citing loss of benefit and using the police as harassment and a range of other claims that did not hold water. As a result, Don and Anita, who are an elderly couple, had to employ a solicitor and barrister to defend themselves. This has cost them a considerable amount of money, nearly £8,000 to date, which is a significant portion of their life savings. But it gets worse, Mr. Deputy Speaker. On the 5th of October 2009, Don and Anita were in Harlow Town Centre and saw the individual coming towards them. He appeared physically very fit, was walking without a stick or crutches, and was carrying many heavy bags of shopping. Paul Carlyle, the fraud investigator, had previously suggested that the photographic evidence would be crucial in court. But when Don tried to take a photo, both the individual and his wife attacked him and pushed him to the ground. They pushed his face into the concrete, dug their knees into Mr. Horton's back to try and keep him crushed into the ground. There were many witnesses and the individual was subsequently arrested. But the following day, the police came and arrested Mr. Don Horton instead. The individual had alleged, while in custody, that Mr. Horton had been harassing him. Don's health had been seriously deteriorating all this time, and his daughter had to accompany him to the police station. They then spent several hours waiting in a cold police cell. A duty solicitor attended and a recorded interview was made. Don's daughter had to stay by his side for hours and hours before the official wheels turned and the case was dismissed as nonsense. Of course, no further action was taken, but it was symptomatic of this case. The public justice system was malfunctioning and failing to protect the most vulnerable, the good people who do the right thing. In the meantime, the stress and strain had a severe impact on Don's health, from which he is still recovering. I ask you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, what kind of country are we living in when the criminal justice system can be abused in such a way? The state exists at its most basic level to fight crime, to protect vulnerable and good people, to uphold the rule of law. That is why we pay our taxes. And what is so deeply depressing about this case is that time and time again, whether from long delays or incompetence or sheer calculating indifference, the state has failed to do its most basic job. Today, Mr. and Mrs. Horton have withdrawn as witnesses, out of despair that the court case will never happen. The individual is still free and still reportedly claiming disability benefit. Mr. and Mrs. Horton are still living in fear. Since I was elected MP for Harlow and the surrounding villages, I've tried unsuccessfully to raise this with the authorities. On the crucial point of data protection, I wrote to the Office of Information Commissioner, setting out the years of torment and fear and suffering that have afflicted Mr. and Mrs. Horton. On the 13th of August 2010, the ICO's Head of Complaints Resolution, Mr. Lang, replied to me, and he was kind enough to inform me in details about the 8 principles of good information handling and how under, and I quote, Section 42 of the Data Protection Act, an individual can ask the Commissioner to conduct an assessment as to whether it is likely or unlikely that an organisation has complied with the Data Protection Act. If we consider it is unlikely that an organisation has complied with the Data Protection Act, our aim is to ensure that the organisation understands its obligations and takes any steps necessary to help ensure compliance either in that particular case or in the